And welcome to our next session with Nikki Tooman of Sticky Digital. Nikki, how are you doing today?
Good, Brian. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. So let's just get right into it. Nikki, tell us a little bit about how you came to found Sticky Digital, the retention marketing agency.
Yes. So as you said, I'm Nikki Tooman, one of the co-founders of Sticky Digital.
It's a new name.
Sticky Digital. And I actually came to found Sticky Digital when I met my co-founders, Mariel and Nicole, at the previous agency we were all at. It was one of the larger Shopify agencies and still is one of the largest Shopify agencies. And we started as one of my co-founders and I were employee number 9 and 10, and we got to know each other and really just started we worked really well together. And as we sort of worked together and we were at that agency, we were both at that agency for quite a few years. We were recruited to go brand side and start working and building Shopify brands. It was myself, her, our other co-founder, and there was 6 other people that they recruited from the same agency. And so we went brand side to start building actual Shopify brands. And we were in charge of doing everything from sort of the finding of the products, naming of the products, putting it all to market, building the Shopify store, doing the whole thing, branding exercises, everything. And as we were going through it, we realized that our previous CEO, his background was in direct response. So he was really great at throwing money at the funnel and these people converting. Well, what we were realizing is that on the other side of it, the retention piece, we weren't spending a ton of time focused on retaining these customers as we were putting money into it. There's still at this time where Facebook was still pretty good and you could throw money in and really get a good return. But we were hey, we need to work on actually bringing these people back because this isn't going to be a forever game. And that sort of is really how Sticky Digital started, is that we realized that so many brands were doing that exact same thing, just throwing money and weren't really focused on sort of what happens next. Just relying on people just coming back because they know your product, they like your product, but not really marketing to them. And when getting into this, we realized that sort of retention by a lot of brands, people think of it as email, right? Email and SMS, or back then as SMS was starting. So really email. It's about more than that. It's more than just email and SMS, and brands weren't actually thinking of it that way. They were thinking of retention, I'm sending emails, I'm doing what I need to do. But it really is are you actually taking all of these tools and tech stacks that you have and really tying them together to speak to the customers appropriately at the right time when they need to be spoken to, and sort of bringing them back on their own personal journeys.
So I'm going to just go really deep into it.
Yeah.
It sounds to me that the clients of the beginning clients of yours, and when you first started Sticky Digital, they weren't even asking about retention. It was more of you seeing that as an opportunity and bringing it to them. Do I have that right?
Yeah, so we never started doing acquisition, but the first couple of calls that we took, ironically, people were speaking to us thinking that that is what we were doing, and we were no.
Acquisition.
We are not doing that piece. We're doing the piece that nobody is thinking about, which is that retention piece. So you're very correct in stating that people were really not understanding what we were trying to build retention wise, because it was still this very foreign thing. And I think even now not a lot of brands really understand it. And there's very few of us in this space that solely do just retention marketing. And so we still do today have some of those conversations where people don't really understand what that is.
Can I ask you about what that discussion is almost, because as you said, just even a couple of years ago, and yes, in the present moment, but a couple of years ago, it was so much on acquisition. When you brought up retention and you had to educate them on this, was there a point where you and your co-founders were almost what are we doing? Let's make it easy on us and just talk about acquisition. And why did you not decide to do that and just say no, retention is key. We're going to educate them. They're going to get it. And what was that like?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we're not masochists, so we did not want to do that. We did not want to do acquisition. We never did. It was never something that we had a want or a drive or a passion to do. And I think the more people that didn't really understand what retention was or how it could be utilized profitably or even well made us feel
Hmm.
like we were doing the right thing and like we were actually going down the right path. The conversations for us where we're like educating people on like full funnel retention marketing, where like we're talking to them not just about email and SMS, but how you can pull in your subscription program and how you can pull in loyalty, how you can pull in rewards, how you can pull in like your customer service tools to like really speak to your customers genuinely. Those are the conversations that are the most fun for us, because it's just you're uncovering sort of like this whole new world to your merchants. So
Yeah.
that's like what makes it the most fun. Like we've had so many calls where people are like, "Oh, you do more than just send emails," and it's like, yeah, like it's looking at the whole picture and making sure that like when they get that email should be given to them, and that they don't have any customer service tickets open, that they don't have any sort of like they didn't just place an order and now you're asking them to place an order for something else. Like it is really like a full funnel picture that people don't think about when it comes to retention marketing.
Yeah. And so correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me that you work with clients that and Shopify brands that are really starting to figure things out and starting to scale and wanting to scale. Is that right?
Yeah, so we like our sweet spot is really anybody that's doing over $5 million today on Shopify. But
Okay.
we work with brands that are doing over $55 million a year on Shopify, and there's sort of like that whole space in between. Because even those guys that are doing a lot, a good example, like we just did an audit for a brand, and they're driving a ton of revenue through their retention, right? Just through email and SMS, they're driving a ton of revenue, big influencer backed brand. And like we did an audit for them and we're like, hey, you guys should actually be collecting first party data on entrants, and you should be doing, and we
Hmm.
listed out a whole bunch of things that are like missed opportunities. And they were like, oh, we didn't even think about any of that stuff because all we're doing is driving revenue today through email. We didn't actually think about like the long-term gain. So it's sort of like helping all of those brands that even have a sophisticated system set up really understand that like there's probably significantly more that you can be doing to help the future you.
Now, I guess the way that I look at it, two different buckets. One is the different channels that you have to optimize and to reach out and the customer touch points, and then the other bucket is what you just mentioned with like the actual customer data. Um, do you? I guess my first question is: do you think about it? Is there another bucket that I'm missing, and do you think about it like that? And then the follow up question to that is there one that comes first that you have the discussions with? Like, is it more about the customer data first and understanding how to capture that and where to store it, or is it about the channels first? Or maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think like the thing that we try educating most brands on first is like it really is about the customer data. And like you might know what a customer wants by being able to run a segment or like through some of these other
Hmm.
like data tools, right, that people are using. But like you have all of the power through like these retention tools to sort of like collect data upon entrance. So we all know like you go to a website and a pop-up shows up and you're going to put in your email because you're going to get 15% off or free shipping or whatever that looks like. Like why aren't you using this opportunity to gather more information on your customer, right? Like we work with a brand that's a maternity brand, but they also do postpartum stuff.
Hmm.
Why aren't you using that opportunity to find out where are they in that journey, right? Like when is their baby due? Like literally any sort of information that can add the personal touch on the line. I think a lot of brands are really missing today, because as like it gets more competitive, you need to be more compelling and speak to them as to who they are, where they are in their journey, and what they're looking for. Um, I mean, I'm a mom, so I think like this speaks to me too. But like when I'm shopping for my kids' stuff, I have both a girl and a boy, and so sending content to me that has both like girl and boy imagery or talking to the
Yeah.
both of them speaks to me because I have both. But a mom that has maybe two girls and you're sending her content that's like really boy related stuff or toys that like feature little boys playing with the toys, like it's just as easy as sort of like knowing that she's a mom of girls and switching the content that you're delivering to her to feature all girl content,
Yeah.
girl imagery, girl toys. Like even if that's not the sole focus of what you want to deliver to them, it's first impression, right? So like knowing that like you're like, mom, I know you, I see you, like this is the stuff that you're gonna like all of that first party data and really understanding who your customer is from the jump is going to be the most impactful for a brand.
Yeah. I want to ask you about first party data compared to like the third party data. And I guess my hypothesis is that you're really pushing on your clients to capture that first party data information because of the transformation that has happened in the last few years where you cannot rely on any more third party data.
Yep.
Is that a viewpoint that you would agree with? And is there anything else that I'm missing of why that first party data is now so much more important than ever?
Yeah, I think you've hit it on the head, right? Like it's we don't know what to trust now, right? Like you're hearing like, okay, we can't even trust open rates. We can't trust any of this data. Like you can't trust any information that you're getting. All of these like tools that are like, oh, this is your geo, this is your demo. Like you're having to take it for word, but like you don't actually
Right.
know, right? So to me, it just makes the most sense. Like ask for it in the beginning when your customer is the most engaged. Because even on this point, even collecting first party data 30 days down the line, it's going to be so much harder for you to collect it from a customer than collecting it from a customer with the intent on day one. So, like,
Hmm.
if you know Brian is shopping here and he's willingly going to give you his email, collect another piece of information that you can use further down the line. And I think a lot of brands don't do that because it's almost like analysis paralysis. It's like, well, I want to know all of these things about this person. So how do I choose what one thing I'm going to ask? Um, but you should really think about it strategically and say, like, what one piece of information can help me further down the line market to this person? And you can use
Yeah.
all of that information in your Facebook ads, right? Like you can push all of this data information from Klaviyo into like a meta. You can do a lot more with it. And just knowing that people are giving you the information, like I would trust that over a third party tool any day.
Yeah. During this summit, there's also a session with Okendo, and during this discussion, I'd tell all the audience like to also tune in there because it's very relevant. Where Okendo talks about obviously the first party data and the ability they're pushing to do as many surveys and questionnaires as possible on D2C websites. And so that kind of leads me to again the tech stack and the retention marketing tech stack in general. You know, I don't care if it's agnostic or not. Like in your opinion, how do you like where do you start? And maybe as an agency too, giving recommendations and suggestions to those brands. The amount of tools now I feel like are endless. I think one more thing to mention is that even if you look at the Shopify App Store, I think every month there's another 100. I think I saw like another 100 or so apps
It's
that have
wild.
been approved and are on Shopify. So I guess like tell us what's the suggestion? Where do you start with the retention marketing stack, and help us or guide us through that process?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that a merchant needs to remember is like when you're looking at evaluating a new app, like does it work with your current tech stack? Does it work with your current other tools? Like a lot
Hmm.
of merchants get into murky waters when they're like, "Oh, this seems really cool." And they'll like install an app and they'll start running towards the finish line with that app, but they don't realize that it doesn't integrate or it can't like you can't push profile properties into Klaviyo to like help you further segment. Like you can't take the data that you're getting from that tool and do anything else with it. So I think like that's number one, right? Like whenever we're
Okay.
making recommendations, and I agree with you, I think there's plenty of agencies that are like they will shout specific technologies from the rooftops. Like for us, like we will always give our merchant options and say like, hey, these are the best guys in this space and like these are the reasons why we think you would benefit. These are the differences, right? Like maybe
Yeah.
it's a cost thing, maybe it's an ability thing, who knows, but like these are the differences. um but what you need to make sure you're doing is like look at how you can use the data from that one app and how can you use it across multiple other channels. A back and
Mm.
stock tool, you don't want to use a back and stock app that can't connect to your email, because then what's the point of it, right? Just because it's cheaper doesn't necessarily mean anything. Or you're going to have to do a manual upload into Klaviyo for all of the emails that you've collected for a back and stock. Is the manpower actually that you're going to have to put in on the tail end actually worth the cost savings when you could just have something that's like collecting and building segments for you out of the gate, right? So it's like
Yeah.
you need to sort of like figure out what's more important to you. And I think probably like time is money. And so really thinking about how these all work together is like primary and number one. Like you need to find something that works within your current wheelhouse. And with that being said, too, like if you're looking at overhauling your tech stack, I think that that's totally fine and great too. Just make sure that as you start overhauling it, you're probably overhauling it because you found one technology that you really love and you want to move forward with. So then use that as like your North Star. And what does that one technology connect to? And sort of like start filtering from there.
Yeah, I think that's actually really good advice. I haven't thought about it like that because I've heard the case of like, well, you don't want to go towards the new apps because they're brand new, and maybe the ones that have been out there for a while don't have the latest and greatest features. But and again, I'm just clarifying for the audience what you said, Nikki, is like think about it where hey, what kind of data is it capturing? Where is it hosting that data? Is it able to then transfer that data to other tools that you're
Yep.
currently using? And probably what's probably most important out of all this is centralizing that in some place so then you can
Somewhere.
have retention marketing strategy on top of it. Do I have that right?
Yeah, because like, what's the point in collecting it if you can't use it? Like, yeah, so what, you know that all of these people are returning this specific item, but like if you can't do anything with that information, like what really does it do for your brand at the end of the day?
Hmm. And maybe that's a good point for even the technology companies that are listening here. And again, like I work for a technology company, but it's super important to make sure, yeah, you can capture all the data. But if you don't share that and offer the ability to share that with other tools, like you're losing clients if that's the way that clients are supposed to be thinking about it.
Totally. And like just having the ability to use the information or push the information somewhere else, like even if it
Mhm.
takes you an extra step to be able to do it, like as a technology, being able to provide your merchant with the information that they can then use somewhere else is so beneficial to them, because it will
Mhm.
it's sort of one of those things, like it's when you find a tool that actually like you can push information and pull information back and forth between the two, like you have just sort of like secured your livelihood almost like with a merchant, because like you are
Yeah.
now the most profitable piece of technology that they have, because you are collecting data and you're giving the data to somebody else. Like it's so smart as a technology to be able to do that.
Yeah. Let me kind of follow up with one more topic, and it's around obviously this is AI and CX Virtual Summit, and I want this topic to be more around customer experience right now. Um, how do you align again customer experience with retention? Like, are those almost the same words for you at the end of the day? Like, and then also the clients that are yours right now, what does customer experience mean to them, and how important is it in their retention marketing philosophy?
Yeah, I think it probably differs based on size of brand and sort of like the ability and the team structure that they have and things like that. Obviously, when you're talking to a smaller team, when you talk about doing a strategy or implementing something that they think is going to create more customer service tickets or
Hmm.
create more feedback from a customer, right? Because you're asking for information, to them, they immediately are like, oh, well, I don't want to do that because it's now going to be more work for me and I only have one person manning it. Um, so I think it's like sort of like aligning your strategy to your capabilities. Obviously, there are CX tools that you can sort of like create macros for, and you can really like
Hmm.
auto respond to a lot of people based on like what you've asked them to like send you an email for or whatever. Um, but I think it really does depend on the brand. We have a lot of brands that they find it very important to do like the one-to-one personal touch. And I personally think that that is a wonderful strategy. The one-to-one personal touch, and that one-to-one personal touch can still be an automated message, but it should be signed from a person. And when they respond to that email, should go to that person's inbox. So for instance, like if your CX person's name is Anna, like in a flow as they're not converting, like Anna writes them this email that's like, hey, this is Anna. I lead our customer service team. Like, how can I help you? I've noticed you still haven't purchased. Respond to this email and I can help you make that decision. That should go to Anna's inbox, or Anna should be the one responding, right? So I think it's like you can have sort of like a mixture of both, like automated messaging and a personalized touch in order to sort of like convert your customer, but it's all about implementing it properly and making sure that, like, I don't know. Brian, I think we spoke about this before. If you're an influencer brand and your celebrity is like texting you or responding to you, like nobody's going to buy it. So like just make it personal and like make it, if you're putting in the effort, like make it personal and make it.
We did talk about this.
Yeah.
But let me pretend I'm a client right now and I ask you, okay, that's all great, but honestly, how do you scale that? Like I only have 2 CX people on my team. I can't be actually emailing and able to respond to every one of them. Like what's your answer to that?
Yeah, I think it's, so you shouldn't have to like do automated messagings like in every single one of your flows, right? But like let's pick the most impactful flows that's going to help you for your bottom line. So Brian, like if you are doing browse abandonment, if you have a browse abandonment flow set up and you've noticed that somebody is browsing your website, they have an intent to purchase, or even an abandoned cart, they have an intent to purchase. If they still have not recovered their cart from these email flows that you've set up, it's probably going to be more impactful for you to email those people and find out like, hey, how can I help you? The influx isn't going to be large. It's not going to be like you're sending a welcome email that's like, hey, let me help you choose your product. These people have actually viewed something. They have the intent to purchase. They're really close to being a purchaser. So those are the people that you should focus on, not like the everybody. So I think like it is scalable as long as you choose to do it in the appropriate channels and like in the appropriate flows as well.
I love it. And thanks for getting in the weeds with me there. I think that's like something that the audience just wants to know exactly. Because I've heard that so many times where it's like, okay, yep, you got to personalize it. And of course, like you want to, as you scale your company, right? And maybe I'm wrong here, but if you scale your company, you still want to maintain what got you there in the first place. And you were probably super personal in the first place, but it's really, really difficult to do that.
Yeah, and I think the important thing to remember too is it's like if you, the founder, like if you're the face of your brand and people know that you're the face of the brand, I don't even necessarily think it has to come from you. I think just knowing that somebody from your brand is reaching out to the prospect or the customer and like they're willing to help them make the purchase, that also goes towards your brand and who you are and the people that you're hiring, and that you care about them because you're making sure that the people that are working at your brand also care about them. So it doesn't necessarily need to be face of the brand, head of the brand. As long as it's coming from somebody personal at the brand, it's not going to matter to the customer at the end of the day.
But maybe actually last thing here and add to this, because maybe I'm right or wrong, but it's like whatever the founder's personality is, like how they talk, their voice, their tone, what they represent, try to still take that and blend that into those responses. Maybe it's not coming from the founder, but still that tone is the same throughout that entire experience.
Totally. And I think like most of the time when you're hiring a customer service team, like the brand or the founder, you probably are very specific on how they're talking about the products or how they're talking to the customers. Use that and continue that through, right? Whenever you're communicating with your client or your customer. But I think it is really important that like regardless of who it comes from, like it sounds authentic and it doesn't sound automated, if that sounds weird because it is automated, but it does sound authentic and it sounds personal. I think that's the biggest thing, sounding personal. That is what's going to convert somebody.
Love it. Well, again, Nikki, thanks for kind of hitting on a whole bunch of things during this session. A lot of takeaways for the audience. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Have a great one. Happy holidays.
Thanks, everyone. Yes, happy holidays.